A summer of twists and turns, ups and downs, starts and goes, and all types of fits. Well, don't look now, but the New York Red Bulls might just be finding a little bit of momentum. Hello there, it is Christian Dyer, and this is the Red Bulls Insider Podcast on MSG Networks. And wow, that was an interesting result for the Red Bulls in the quarterfinals of the US Open Cup on Thursday night. A 1-0 win, another late game winner against the New England Revolution. Keep in mind, about a week and a half ago, in stoppage time, Gonzalo Verón scoring the game winner in a 3-2, much needed 3 points to escape out of Foxborough. And this time, Bradley Wright Phillips late in the match at Harvard to propel the Red Bulls into the semifinals of the Open Cup for just the second time since 2003. And you talk about the significance of this match. The Red Bulls are now 2 wins away, 3 down, 2 to go, for getting their first ever Open Cup in franchise history. Some might say that winning this tournament would be more significant than the Supporters' Shield titles that they've had 2 now in the past 4 seasons. I might disagree on that and the significance of what the Supporters' Shield, in particular a few years ago under head coach Mike Petke, what that meant to the franchise to finally get a trophy and hardware of significance. But make no mistakes about it, the Open Cup is very important. Red Bulls being able to do that, especially in a year like this where they have had a number of ups and downs, it would be key, it would be very important. Listen, the Open Cup is a tournament not many MLS teams have won. It is one of those that it tends to be the more premier teams tend to have come out from it year in, year out. So being able to join that fraternity would be good. It gives some momentum to this organization as well, especially in a year where this team is right now is on the outside looking in terms of the playoff picture. I think that they get into the playoffs. I think they've got that type of squad that can grind out the results, but certainly in a year like this, it would be a good thing. I also think it's something for the team to coalesce around in the confidence. In the past few weeks, they've been able to knock off New York City FC in the Open Cup tournament, a team that's top 3 in the Eastern Conference, a team that could probably make a big push into the playoffs. They're built for that. Philadelphia Union, a team that's knocked the Red Bulls out of the Open Cup a couple times in the past few seasons. And now the Revolution, and the Red Bulls haven't had a great track record against the Revolution up in Massachusetts, let alone in this tournament. So a big Thursday night win for the Red Bulls in the Open Cup, now 2 matches away from possibly lifting that trophy for the first time. And I'm going to say, just in a season like this, it's a little bit of confidence as well. They've now beaten 3 MLS teams in this tournament, but to be able to take this and be able to parlay it then into regular season action, we now look at the past 6 matches for this Red Bulls team. 3 in MLS regular season play, 3 in the Open Cup, against the 3 same teams I mentioned before. They've had regular season and Open Cup matches against both NYCFC, the New England Revolution, and the Philadelphia Union. They've now taken 5 of those 6 matches. 2 of them in the MLS regular season, losing once to NYC, and now all 3 in the Open Cup. They're not beating slouch teams. They're beating good teams, solid teams, qualified teams, and now 2 matches away from potentially lifting the Lamar Hunt Trophy. That would mean an automatic berth into the Champions League, which comes with the extra allocation money, more resources, and just a little bit more prestige. And I'm going to say, on a personal note, for head coach Jesse Marsch, Thursday's win against the New England Revolution, I think validates somewhat the process. They've talked about the importance of winning trophies and winning hardware. There's that Supporters' Shield from 2 years ago, kind of improbable. Everyone was writing off this team in preseason, saying they weren't even going to make the playoffs. Well, they go out there, win the regular season title, and then are able to, parlay that into next year, a slow start, but then getting hot during the summer, winning an Eastern Conference title for the 3rd time in 4 years, now being able to point potentially to, if this were to happen, an Open Cup championship. It would just be more of the sustained success. And I think it would also give a fan base perhaps a little agitated with this year's mediocrity. It would validate the process and everything Jesse Marsch has been going through. So today, we're going to have a great show. In a few moments coming up will be Jack Bell, someone who's written for the New York Times, covered this team, covered this sport for a number of years. He is now editor-in-chief of empireofsoccer.com. Jack knows his stuff. He's got great insight. We disagree on a bunch of things, but at the end of the day, Jack has the collateral and the wherewithal and the real knowledge of not just this team, but how this sport is played globally, but in this country and the unique complexities of it, so that even when I disagree with a Jack Bell, I sit there and I listen, and it gives me something to think about and ponder. Great insight, great presentation. Check out empireofsoccer.com. I'm sure everyone here has already got that one as part of their daily routine, but certainly well worth the time. It's got a good staff of writers over there. So coming up, we're going to hit up Jack Bell, talk about that Open Cup victory, talk a little bit about this franchise, and maybe throw a curveball question or two at him, because we wouldn't have it any other way here on the Red Bulls Insider Podcast. We are joined now with Jack Bell, the editor-in-chief of empireofsoccer.com. And Jack, thanks so much for joining us here on the Red Bulls Insider Podcast.
It's my pleasure.
Now, I want to talk with you about the Thursday night Open Cup match, a match that sends the Red Bulls into the semifinals of the tournament for the first time since 2003, when they made the title game and lost to the Chicago Fire. Is this some sort of catalyst type of moment here for the Red Bulls and potentially for the franchise to be two matches away from another piece of hardware?
Well, Christian, I think it could be important if they win the tournament and if they take some silverware and qualify for the CONCACAF Champions League. As we know, I think two out of the last three seasons, they've won the Supporters' Shield, the number one overall team in the league, and then failed to really advance in the playoffs. So it's kind of left a bitter taste, I think. And the entry to the Champions League is certainly, while it's not paramount, it does make a difference, I think, for the team. So you have the situation where you finish first overall, don't make it to the championship final, certainly don't win MLS Cup. So in my mind, the Supporters' Shield has always been kind of an empty accomplishment. So can they parlay this into something more in the league? Perhaps. They've kind of been on a better run the last couple of weeks, but as we know, it's the middle of the season. There's still a ways to go. They've still had problems scoring goals, as they did last night, just with the one goal in the game. So I think, look, to use an old cliche, the jury's still out, Christian.
And it's interesting, you mentioned about the better run of form over the past 5 and 6 weeks really has coincided with that first win in the Open Cup, that match against New York City FC, a match that really turned about halftime with Morales on NYC going down with the injury. But since then, their form, only dropping one match since then in all competitions, the Open Cup has kind of jump-started this team in a way in the regular season as well as through the tournament.
Yeah, it's jump-started, and also I think Jesse Marsch has really put a focus on this as a route to the Champions League, as a way to put a piece of silverware in the trophy case, and played pretty much his first-choice team when possible. I mean, the last couple of games in the regular season in MLS and last night in the Open Cup, he's been kind of hamstrung by injuries and by Kemar Lawrence and Murillo being in the Gold Cup. So he's taken it seriously and put a focus on it. I mean, it's a competition you're involved in, And the idea in any sport, in any endeavor, is if you're in a competition, is to go out and win it. And I think that's certainly the mindset now. And now they await, the winner of FC Cincinnati and Miami FC, two ostensibly D2 teams. And I think they look at the draw and they see a realistic route to the Open Cup final.
And not only that, I think in a season where I don't want to say Jesse Marsch is on any type of hot seat, because I think the success he's had the past 2 years and the need to do some rebuilding, some tweaking of this team will certainly buy him some time. But in a season of starts and spurts and ups and downs, a run to the Open Cup final and maybe getting that first significant trophy in franchise history might just stave off a fan base that's beginning to get a little agitated at the lack of success and form this year.
Well, I think look, we both know fans can be fickle, and
no, never.
And I think particularly in this area and this sport, it's sort of a concentrated collection of people who are can be extremely vocal. It's fan group driven. Christian, I don't see him in any imminent danger. The club, the Red Bull organization, I think, is trying to stick to a plan of promoting homegrown young players and sprinkling in other veterans and acquisitions, and to me, what's important for this franchise is to stick to that plan, because it's learned so many times up and back with from Bruce Arena to Hans Baca and bringing in DPs, and there's been no real sustained success, no real sustained plan, and I think it's a challenge to the club, to Jesse, and to players to stick to that plan and to get some sign of success and some promise of future success.
Well, and it was funny. 3 seasons ago, I remember talking with Mike Pecky, the former Metro Stars head coach, the former Red Bulls head coach, rather, and the first man to bring this franchise a piece of significant hardware with that supporter shield. And we were talking about the end of the Thierry Henry era. It was going to be, the final season of Henry here in New York with the Red Bulls. And he said, we have to get younger. We have to rely on the academy players. And Pecky was talking about that 3 seasons ago, and now the team has embraced it. My question to you, Jack, is kind of shifting now from the Open Cup to big picture stuff with the Red Bulls. Has the team shifted maybe too much in one direction towards the homegrown players? And maybe whether it's on the field or off the field, the need for the stars, the need for the impact players to come in maybe is lessened to the detriment of the team just a little bit?
Well, I think it's a really good point, Christian. I think the.
Could you say that one more time, Jack?
It's a really good point.
There we go.
It's an open question, because for as positive a move it is for the Red Bulls to be developing players in their academy and to be promoting them to the first team, the guys are, players like Adams, like Wheel, like Sean Davis. They're good players. They're solid players. Are they star players? We don't know yet. And I think you could say that across the league with academy, with homegrown. They're competent players, but when you look at them on the field, are they? Do they stand out? Do they make a real difference, or are they simply more American role players? And I think, to go back to your question, is there a dearth of star players? Well, I think you could make that case, and really the thought all along in soccer in the United States is that you need stars to draw people. Okay, so they went out, they got Thierry Henry, Rafa Marquez, Tim Cahill. Did it make a difference at the gate? Well, maybe for a bit, a couple of times. I think it had more of an impact when the team went on the road. So you come back to the question, which is more important, the stars or winning? And I think for this club, what would make the difference now and in the near future would be winning. And we can talk about fans and attendance. Nothing cures the ills like winning consistently. And obviously, we both know this club has not done that.
But yet, you are in a market in New York where they want to win. They do want superstars by the same token.
Right.
And now more than ever with the Premier League's exposure, the Bundesliga, Serie A's on TV, fans are more willing in this satellite era and this internet era to stay at home if there isn't that one or two big names. And I agree with you, winning is more important than the stars. You put Thierry Henry on a 500, MLS team, he's going to draw 15,000. But you put him perhaps on a winning team, and does this club, does this franchise need something special, not just off the field, but I think back to the last two playoff series where the impact players were that Columbus series, the Kai Kamara, Federico Higuain, the difference makers that maybe this team doesn't have. The Piatti last year for Montreal, who single-handedly did so much in that playoff series. It seems to me that the balance of this squad is good, but where's the difference maker? That's got to be a priority in the summer transfer window.
Well, Christian, we all talk about this all the time, and in my mind, my question to people when we talk about stars is, tell me who out there would make a difference at the gate and on the field. And I think in terms of pure star power, it's a pretty limited collection of players, and we know who they are, and they're all not coming here now. So do you go about trying to build a quality team across the board with a couple of key players? Yeah. Do they have that guy right now? I don't know. I think they thought that maybe Sasha Question would be that guy. Is Felipe that guy? They don't have the firepower up top right now. I think it's a tough equation, and I think they're kind of nibbling around the edges, as I think most teams are, because you don't want to put out a bucket of cash there on one guy and have it potentially fail. I mean, there's been a lot of criticism of Gonzalo Verón, but for better or worse, the guy's had a lot of injuries. When I see him, I see a very skilled player. Does he have guys to play with? I think this is one of the issues that really nobody talks about. You bring over a player like Thierry Henry. Who's he got to play with? When he looks up on the field, who does he have to pass to? If he's not confident in giving the ball to one of his teammates, you're pretty well discounting his value. So I think it's the whole boat needs to be lifted in terms of quality and skill and understanding. Will it come from the academy? Again, I think the academy guys, as it stands now, are complementary players. When we look at the overall international landscape of the game, I think really the preeminent American players, wherever they are still looking to go first overseas. Christian Pulisic, guys in England, in Holland, where have you. That's really the first stop for them, unless it's a guy like Jordan Morris who looks around and says, you know what, I'm just as comfortable at home. Landon Donovan, I'm just as comfortable at home. So it's a case by case thing in my mind, and it's a jumble. It's a jumble, Christian.
This team has said that they're going to be signing 3 players, at least 2, possibly 3 players during the summer transfer window. Where are the position of need? I think we can both agree that a center back is desperately needed. But where else do you see this team needs to upgrade? And does it have to be starters or just depth role players coming in?
Well, I agree with you. I think they need help at center back. Look, I don't particularly think a lot of Perenelle. Colin's the type of guy where when he's on the opposing team, you can't stand him, but you love him on your team. Up front, I think look, Bradley Wright is a quality striker, and he's proven it over the last couple of seasons in the league. They've had, as we said, they've had problems scoring goals lately. So I think that has to be a primary field of concern. And if you're going to spend money, which again is an open question, I think that's where you might want to look. Now, who they have in mind, I don't know. You follow it.
Do they know, Jack? Do they know? That's the question.
I don't know. It seems like they've tried to work within the overall Red Bull framework of things, whether it's Salzburg, Leipzig, what have you, and other than Daniel Royer, really haven't come up with somebody steady from the organization, shall we say? And look, I can't criticize them for trying to keep it in house. If you think you have a guy that could work, but my issue always with a player coming on loan is if he's coming on loan, to me that sends a message that he's not really wanted wherever he might have been, whether it's Salzburg or Leipzig. So are you getting somebody else's problem? So it's I don't know where these people are coming from. I saw this morning that the Japanese international Honda has moved from Milan to Pachuca, and these are the type of guys that can have an impact. I think one of the huge criticisms of MLS over the years was in the middle of the pack in terms of roster strength. Those are really the guys that drive a team, that make a real difference. Could Tyler Adams be a player like that? Maybe. What we saw in the U20 World Cup was kind of a revelation with him. And then he comes back to the Red Bulls, and he has more of a limited role. So my question is, when are the homegrown guys really going to step up? And if you want to build around them, okay, let's build around them. If you want to bring in some quasi stars, okay, who are they? Where are they? And I don't know. I would assume that Jesse Marsh and his staff, they do know. So we'll see. We'll see over the next month or so.
Sidebar, I give you a magic wand and you can bring any one player from franchise history going back to 1996 with the Metro Stars and plop them in form into this team right now. Who would that one player be? To me, I think I'd go for somebody like Amado Guevara. Certainly a guy like Clint Mathis would not hurt. And, Michael Bradley would be pretty nice as well. Yeah, I was thinking Guevara as well, just because of that such unique skill set as a playmaker. Certainly central midfield's a little crowded, but you always find space for Guevara. I was also thinking, and you're probably gonna chuckle at me, but I was gonna go with Lothar Matthäus. I know he had an up and down year, his 1 year here in 2000, but when he was on form, when he was playing, when he was plugged in, that guy as a center back brought distribution, positioning, shape, and you just see him being as a complement, someone who carried the ball up the field. As long as he's not on vacation in France during the middle of the season, I mean, that's a guy who could free up Sasha and Felipe and Tyler Adams and some of those guys to be able to, I think, not have to concentrate as much defensively, but while also bringing some much-needed possession to the back line. Call me crazy, though, on that one.
Well, I'll call you crazy on that one. Okay. Look, I think you can make a comparison between Matthäus and Bastian Schweinsteiger in Chicago. When they signed him, we both know there was so many negative comments that the guy's done, he's not going to have an effect. But you can't discount the soccer. It's a cliche. The soccer IQ, the smarts, the experience of of a guy like that. And I think Mateus brought that to the United States. But I also think, as I mentioned before, he was kind of a fish out of water. He didn't have much around him, and it was different. I think it was deflating for a guy like that. Who look, we all know how uncompromising some of the German players can be, how critical they can be, and he wasn't shy about voicing his opinion about that. And again, I think it's often difficult for highly skilled, accomplished players to come here, go out on the field and look around and not be impressed with what's surrounding them. And I think that was even more extreme way back. I'm not going to say it's ancient history, but it was, it's 10, 12 years ago that we're talking MLS and Lothar Matthäus. So it was a different time, different place. Would he make a difference now? I think he might make more of a difference now, certainly, than then, Christian.
And we're talking with Jack Bell, the editor-in-chief of EmpireOfSoccer.com, doing a great job over there. It's got to be on your bookmarks. It's on one of mine. Wanted to ask you now, just kind of shifting back, we'll just keep you a couple more minutes, Jack, but the Dax McCarty trade is being analyzed, reanalyzed, overanalyzed. We've talked about it before, on the practice field and in the press box, and I think maybe even a little bit last year about. I felt that this was a trade that was necessary. I'm a buy low, sell high type of guy. They got $400,000 in allocation money, but did they lose, in the opinion of many fans, the spine of this team?
Well, you're right. We have talked about this, and I'm a big believer, Christian, in that players come and players go, and fans get fixated on a couple of guys, and they get really upset when they're moved along. And I think when the team struggled early this season, everybody was lurching around for a reason, an explanation. What happened? What's missing? Dax is missing. Okay. But again, this is a guy over 30 who had some value for a buyer in Chicago. And maybe he fit in better with Chicago. And I think it's easy to criticize, again, because the Red Bulls were struggling, and now Chicago is coming on strong. But sometimes you have to move on. And I even asked Jesse this question a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was the Dax game when they came back with Chicago. I asked him, I said, does one player really make that much of a difference? Does a player like Dax make a big difference to the Red Bulls? And he kind of danced around the question, but in my mind, as important as he was, as good as he might have been for this club for a couple of years, when you talk about star players in this league, Dax McCarty is not in the top of the conversation. He was a serviceable player. He was a competent player, nothing spectacular, and he went about and he did his job, and that's all well and good. But I think it's more of a case that nobody has really stepped into his role well enough to replace him. That has brought along these discussions of, the team is worse without Dax. I think. In my mind, I look to Sasha Question and I say the team needs more from him, needs more commitment and more activity from Sasha to pick up the slack. Again, I always come back to, are you a fan of the club? Are you a supporter of the club? Or are you a fan of specific players? Look, I think the whole mindset around sports has changed over the years to being fixated on players, and for some reason people's allegiance is more to the player than the club, which I don't particularly understand, because we're going to be here. This club is going to be here. 5 years down the road, most of these players are not going to be around. So, it really goes back for me, asking fans, what do you want? Do you want good teams? Do you just want your favorite players to stick around? And when I first heard the deal, I wasn't that upset. It's like, look, he put in his time here. He did well. Thanks for your service. We've decided to move on, and I think people just have to accept that.
What did you make of his victory lap at Red Bull Arena? I've wanted to ask you that for a few weeks now. Kind of did that 40-minute talk, shake everyone's hand, sign autographs, do the photos, keeping his teammates on Chicago waiting for him for a team meeting in response to that match. What did you make of that from Dax?
Well, not only did he keep his teammates waiting, he kept everybody in the media waiting for like 45 minutes.
And his head coach was not happy about any of that.
Well, yeah, was it kind of a grandstanding? Yeah, I think you could make that case, but to me, it's a one-off thing. It's never going to happen again. He signed a bunch of autographs. He thanked his fans. The fans got a chance to get it out of their system, and I think now we can all move on. Look, I think it was a noble and a kind gesture on his part to recognize the fans and to spend time out there. And that's it. It's over. It's done with. So yeah, it was nice. It was nice. What did you think, Christian? What did you think?
You know what? I'm somebody who's more about the team, and I'm glad you asked me this. It's only fair. It wasn't an easy question. I'm one of those who's about the team component and the team concept. And coming off a difficult match, wasn't an easy match. Not necessarily a great result for Chicago. I think you look at that situation and you say, I'm captain for the day. My heart should be in Chicago. My mind might still be in New York. To keep his teammates waiting like that, to me, I thought that sent a bad message about where his priorities were. I thought that sent a bad message about where his thoughts were after that match. To me, and I know I'm going to get criticized for this, but it reeked a little bit of selfishness at a time when he was captain for the day, but when his team needed him there. He could have certainly acknowledged the fans, spoken with them for a few minutes, but to carry on 45, 50 minutes, maybe even been close to an hour that way, knowing full well that his teammates were waiting for him, to me, that sends the wrong message.
Yeah, well, I also think that it gave him an opportunity to kind of rub the Red Bulls' nose and the whole transaction. I mean, look, I'm not really privy to what went on behind the scenes. It's my understanding that it probably could have been handled better in terms of keeping him informed. Maybe not. I think it was a way for him to kind of stick his finger in their eye a little bit. Listen, people do things for their own reasons, and I don't get too wrapped up in that. It's one game, it's one player. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of soccer, and as I said before, I think if that's what he wanted to do, fine, great. You got your pound of flesh, so to speak, and it's time to move on.
And I want to ask you one final question, Jack, and really appreciate you hopping on board. But, you cover all three of the teams in this area, the New York Red Bulls, NYCFC, and the rebooted New York Cosmos. But specifically about NYCFC, have they taken a step forward, now their third year in their league, to pull equal with the Red Bulls, or maybe even can make the argument surpass when you look at what they've done on the field, the star power that they do have, the balance they have to the roster. They've got some young American talent now that they're grooming, they've drafted, they're developing, signing from their academy. And when you look off the field at what they've been able to do, I know it's been a down year for attendance for them, but being able to win the game that they did a couple weeks ago at Red Bull Arena, have they pulled even with the Red Bulls in this market, or is there still some work to be done?
Well, I think both clubs have some work to do, but this season in particular, I've really I've been impressed with NYCFC. I think Patrick Vieira is an incredibly smart guy, an incredibly well-attuned coach. Look, he's got the experience. We all know that. I think he's going places, and I think the organization has been a pretty quick study on how to build within the constrictions of MLS, which we both know is not easy. I mean, it borders on alchemy sometimes, I think. They put together a quality team with stars, with role players, and with young Americans. Are they even with the Red Bulls? I don't particularly know what that means. I think they're incredible. I think they're a very dangerous team now and through the rest of the season. And I could see them playing in the final easily. So, I like what they've done. I like their players. They have the benefit of being associated with Manchester City, so I think they've reaped the benefit of a guy like the Venezuelan Herrera, who's here on loan. Most likely will not be here next season. But I think that's a smart way to operate sort of a global soccer operation. So are they down in attendance? Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's not the greatest place to see a game. We both know that. Their academy is probably a few years behind the Red Bulls, but I think that's an extremely dangerous team. I was up at training on Tuesday. It's a nice little setup and purchase. I know they're going to be moving next year. That'll be a plus for them. But I look at a guy like David Villa, and the guy is a thoroughbred. He's just a thoroughbred. I hadn't seen him up close before. He's the leanest guy I've seen in a long time. I just like that team. I really do.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the market share and if one of these teams is fully able to take over the market over the next couple of years. But I'll tell you what, the balance right now makes for a real interesting rivalry between these two sides.
Well, to me, there's no reason why they both shouldn't prosper. I mean, this area is certainly big enough to support two MLS teams. There's no doubt in my mind. And the competition is good, and the rivalry is good for the game. Is it red? Is it blue? It's a good discussion. Is it Mets? Is it Yankees? I mean, these are the eternal talking points in the New York metropolitan area. I think it's healthy, and I think it's good for the game.
Well, whether it's NYC or Red Bulls, Mets or Yankees, we know with Jack Bell, it's always on Wisconsin. Jack, thank you. Thank you so much. Probably the proudest alumni of the University of Wisconsin I have ever met in my life. But Jack Bell, editor-in-chief of EmpireOfSoccer.com. Click it, bookmark it, hit it up a few times a day. Anthony Merced does a great job over there with the USL squad coverage, and great website and great things going on. Jack, thanks for joining us.
Christian, thanks very much. It's always a pleasure. Anytime.
A couple weeks ago, we had on Michael Lewis from FrontRowSoccer.com, and a lot like Jack Bell, they were around at the beginning of MLS starting in 1996, covered multiple World Cups, and remember the time certainly before MLS even existed when soccer was trying to gain a foothold in this country. So when I hear Jack Bell say, and to me, this is what really stood out from our interview, but when you hear Jack Bell say, Red Bull is on the right path, trust the process, trust what Jesse Marsch is trying to do, trust what Red Bull ownership's trying to do, you know what? It certainly resonates because this has been a franchise that for so many years, yes, they brought in big names that were successes, such as a Juan Pablo Angel and more recently a Thierry Henry. But when you look at the amount of misses and the amount of money that was spent on bringing in star power, to now see kind of a polar opposite approach, the academy players, the young kids, just developing and forming the nucleus of this organization around those pieces and then going after young talent within CONCACAF. You look at Kamar Lawrence, brought in a few seasons ago, from a Jamaican kid playing in the Jamaican leagues. Now I would say top 3 left back. I don't know how he wasn't on the short list for the All-Star game, but you look at somebody like that. Then there's a Michael Amir Murillo, the 21-year-old right back from Panama, who's now a starting 11 player, has a tremendously large upside. All of a sudden beginning to have the core be academy players, a Tyler Adams, Derek Etienne, Alex Muil, who on any given night, 2 or perhaps 3 of those players will be in the starting 11. Young players coming up through the USL, Aaron Long, a bit of a journeyman in MLS, now all of a sudden really being able to earn his stripes, a first choice center back now, probably one of the best center backs, most consistent ones in MLS so far this year. Made his first MLS start in the season opener at Atlanta United. And then the CONCACAF talent coming in and being able to supplement all that with the overseas names. It suddenly seems like, and Jack touched upon this, and it's a great point, that this organization not only has a plan, but is sticking to it. You go back since the Red Bulls bought this team 10, 11, 12 years ago, the leadership on top of the organization changed regularly, but so did the philosophy. And no sooner did you change your underwear, but Red Bull had another plan, another purpose, and different leadership at the top of the global structure. And then certainly locally, the number of GMs and sporting directors that have come through this organization over the years. Finally, it seems like there's a certain sense of stability. There was a bit of upheaval this offseason. Ollie Curtis being let go, very successful sporting director. In steps in Dennis Hamlet, but the philosophy remained the same. There wasn't a massive upheaval in terms of the starting 11. And Jack Bell, someone who's, covered MLS well into the 2 decades that the league's been in existence, but whose coverage of this team for the New York Times and now with EmpireOfSoccer.com predates all of that. Jack Bell's able to take that look from 30,000 feet up, much like Michael Lewis did on this show a couple weeks ago, and be able to say, there's a plan, there's a philosophy, and finally things are going in the right direction. And for a fan base that I think is getting antsy, and perhaps rightly so after the success of the past few years, to be able to have that sense of direction, it's got to be calming somewhat. The team is under 500. Yes, they are on the outside looking in of the playoff structure, but to be able to know and see that things are building, that it's not a rebuild necessarily, but a retooling this year, blending in new players, that the players that they're signing now in the summer transfer window, 2, potentially 3 players, are going to fit that philosophy. Whether it works out or not, there is at least a plan, a semblance of a plan, and it's built to be sustainable and long-term. And if you take away anything from Jack Bell, and I think there was a lot to take away from him, certainly. He knows his stuff. But if you take away anything from Jack Bell's interview today, it's the fact that there is a direction that this organization is going that it hasn't gone through before, that it struggled to find even during the Metro Stars day, and that there's a commitment to that vision that extends just beyond management but goes into ownership.